for others to watch who weren't able to make it today. So I think that's set to go. And let me share. So let's begin. Okay, so ArcGIS Image for ArcGIS Online. So this is a product that's software as a service. And within ArcGIS Online, it gives us the ability now to host, analyze, and stream imagery. Prior to this, for raster data, you could really only share a picture as a tile layer. So this really expands the environment for ArcGIS Online towards hosting rasters and visualizing and analyzing within that environment. So it's a significant change and addition to ArcGIS Online. So it's a pretty new product. It hasn't been available too long. The initial release was summer of 21. We, at the University of Idaho, participated in a pilot in the spring of 22. And then last summer, it was added to the Esri Educational Institutional Agreement and became available to all higher ed institutions under that agreement. So it's been, we're approaching a year since it's been added now to the agreement. So it as I mentioned, kind of a big change for sharing rasters. Way early on, we used to do it with spatial database engine rasters and ArcIMS, and then Esri acquired Image Server as a standalone product. And we created what were called IS definition files, and that became integrated with ArcServer. And then more recently, Mosaic datasets were popularized with ArcServer, and Enterprise came along for sharing with ArcGIS Online. So those were all on-premises approaches. And now looking forward, ArcGIS Image for ArcGIS Online gives us not all these capabilities yet, but a number of these capabilities that you can do with on-premises for raster data. And as it continues to improve, it may be one that we adopt at the library for the way we share these data, or that you could take advantage of at this time. So right now, if you sign into our Teaching and Scholarly Research portal via web browser or Pro, if you've been in there before, you already have access to ArcGIS Image for ArcGIS Online. If you haven't yet signed in or signed in today, I'll review the sign-ins because we manually allocate these right now to take care of a glitch with ArcGIS Online for how many extensions we have the ability to allocate for folks. So if you sign in today and you don't yet see it, I'll get on that right away and allocate it to you. But if you've been in there before today, you have access to this ability to publish hosted imagery. So publishing currently from two environments. You can certainly do it through the web browser, like you do with a lot of ArcGIS Online interaction. When you add a new item, there is an item type called imagery layer now, and that's what we're discussing here today. And through ArcGIS Pro, we'll show it under the little imagery menu, you have the ability to access a button that's enabled called Create Hosted Imagery. So from either one of those environments now, we can publish rasters to ArcGIS Online. And we'll take a look at both of those after we go through these slides and look at examples of ones I've published and that publishing process after we go through it here. So in general, first you'd have a set of data, either a single raster, a TIFF image, could be a DEM or a natural color image, something of that nature. You choose a layer type, which we'll talk about. You have two choices in that. option. You choose a layer configuration, which you'll see is just like if you want to create a single layer, a mosaic, if you want to create multiple layers. You select the imagery and upload it, and add some documentation, and through those 4 general steps are the way you follow the process to publish a hosted imagery layer. So layer type. You can choose to publish both of these, or you can choose to just publish one. Right now, there are some differences that you want to be aware of here. The tiled imagery layer is the one they're promoting for the most use, and truthfully, in my experience, it works the best so far. You have the ability, when you publish a tiled imagery layer, to share it with everyone, so you can share it anonymously out there on the web. Whereas the dynamic right now, you can only share at the organization level, so you can't share it publicly if you choose to create a dynamic imagery layer. With the tiled imagery layer, you can also create an Open Geospatial Consortium version of that if you want to enable open sharing of that layer. It does have some restrictions. It has to be an RGB image with JPEG compression at this point. Also on the tiled layer, raster function templates aren't supported yet, but they're in beta. A raster function template, for an example, would be if you had 4-band imagery, you can dynamically change it to display infrared as opposed to just natural color. That's not currently supported in the tiled imagery layer, other than in beta there. And then currently with a tiled imagery layer, you don't have the ability to update that layer at this point. So as a lot of you may be aware, on the vector side, you can append features or update or overwrite an existing layer. Right now with a tiled layer, you can't do that. So you would have to delete it and replace it at this point. You can't update it. Now on the dynamic there, you know, we mentioned the limitation of sharing only at the organizational level. This one is comparable to an on-premises image service. And what it does, the big difference is you can get at the individual tiles in a mosaic with a dynamic imagery layer, or with a tiled layer, you can't. So if you had large areas of overlap, for example, with the dynamic, you can inspect every individual image in a mosaic and all the pixels in the image in an image mosaic, even if they overlap. Where with a tiled, those layers will be fused together. In a dynamic layer, you can do raster function templates at this time. So you can take a 4-band image and you can display it as natural color, and you can also display it as color infrared inside a single layer. And then these services can be updated, but only right now if you use the ArcGIS API for Python. So some of these things one takeaway here with like the raster function templates in beta, updating the service with the API. This isn't unlike other things we've seen over the years that come out from Esri that have some limited functionality, and pieces are being added each quarter, as they make those available. So there's some limitations to be aware of since this is a quote unquote newer product, but quarterly we receive updates to this. So, possibly in the next quarter, raster function templates are available for tiled imagery layer, or, by the end of the year, maybe services can be updated on the dynamic side in a way other than using the API. So we'll see how that progresses. So your first step here, step 1, choose what type of layer you want to publish. You can choose one or both. After you choose your layer type, you need to do a configuration. So you might just have one image you're working with for some geographic extent, and you just want to publish that one image as a single layer. You can do that. You might have a set of images, 4, 5, 6 images. You want to mosaic those all into one image, that the layer you're going to host on ArcGIS Online is all of those mosaic together. You can do that. Or if you had a set of images and you want all those to be individual image layers by themselves, you could do that choice for the tile layer. So you have some options there, and you choose which configuration you want to use for the tiled service. Now you'll notice on the dynamic, the one addition, the third one down there says image collection. And that's the type that we mentioned that dynamic is different than tiled, where if you want to be able to get at those single individual tiles in their entirety, you publish it as an image collection. So that's the way we've traditionally done it over the years with the on-premises approach. And you retain, the individuality between the overlap of those images. But there are restrictions since it's organizational. And truthfully, I haven't had great luck with it getting to work with ArcGIS Online so far. So, but you do have that option to test it. So it wouldn't be surprising to me if they do some kind of hybrid, some type of image collection type of service between tiled and dynamic, but we'll have to see how it progresses. Then you define the layer that you're going to update. So you can choose some different properties in there. If you have no data areas and you create a mosaic, you could eliminate those. Or if it's an elevation product, you could choose that. And down in that bottom box through the web browser, you drag and drop images up there like TIFF files, or you browse to a directory, and those data sets then begin to get uploaded to ArcGIS Online, and they're converted from your format to a cloud raster format optimized for the web. After that, you do your selections, you create a little documentation. This item type information is similar to what you've done with vector data or other items in ArcGIS Online. A title, tags, a summary, what folder you want to place those items in. So you have a brief metadata page for documenting this item. And then you publish. So at that point, you've made your selections on the type of layer, how you're configuring it, what imagery is included, and some documentation. After the publishing completes, you get item types that look like this. These are the new item type names. You'll see one called tiled imagery layer hosted, which is, as the name implies, the tiled version. Imagery layer is what they call dynamic, even though it's not in the item type title here. That's the choice in step 1 where you choose a dynamic layer type. So those are the new item types that you'll see in my content alongside your hosted feature layers and other items like that, or your web applications or your web maps. One other thing to note within ArcGIS Online, raster analysis has come to ArcGIS Online now that you have these raster types, right? These are no longer just pictures like we used to have. We get the pixel values back, and you can perform raster analysis to a limited extent in the web browser now in ArcGIS Online, if that's desirable. For people who are Arc Pro users, it might not make a lot of sense, but there are some of the geoprocessing tools built into the web browser to be able to perform raster calculations and that type of thing. So for folks on the Mac, that's a big plus. But just to make you aware, we won't look at any of that today, but to make you aware, inside Map Viewer, you have the ability to do some raster analysis. So just a couple brief testing results. I haven't done big data sets with this. I mean, doing 4 individual 3-band TIFFs, which has been about 4 gigs, takes about 15 minutes on a machine on campus. That's what it took me. And then if I did a slightly larger area that was about, almost 8 gigs, it took about 30 minutes for those data to get processed and the process to complete and have that item published. Now, you don't have to sit there and wait and hold your web browser in that place. Once the process begins, you can safely navigate away from it and come back. But those are just a couple of examples on like ballparking the time. Your experience may differ to a certain extent, depending on, these were 30 centimeter data. So, you're looking at something around those times to upload those data and get a published service out of it. I'll make these slides available after this presentation so that you have access to these links. But there is an ArcGIS blogs page for ArcGIS Image for ArcGIS Online that can be pretty helpful. There's also a Getting Started with ArcGIS Image for ArcGIS Online in the Esri community, which you might take a look at. You can always contact me too if there's questions I might answer that might be helpful to you. We can sit down, take a look, talk about what type of imagery you have and how you might like to make it available. But that concludes the slide presentation. Let's take a look at just in ArcPro. We'll take a look at where this button exists and how to publish from there. We'll take a look in the web browser how to do it, and then I'll show you some of the results from ones I've already published, because the time it would take to publish one here would be a little too long. So let's take a look there. Let me see, does anybody online have any questions? Let me go back to the chat. Nobody yet? Okay, great. So let's go over to just the web browser again. So I'm signed into ArcGIS Online under my content. And if I were hoping to, or if I wanted to create a new tiled imagery layer, like these examples I have in here, you'll see the hosted tile layers. This is the dynamic one. If you wanted to go ahead and create a new one and you have some raster data, under the new item type, what became available to us within the past year is this imagery layer now. We used to just have the tile layer. You've always had the feature layers that you could do for vector data, but we have this imagery layer item now. And you'll see those same screens come up here as the captures on the slides, where we will choose the type of layer that best suits our needs. So here, example, tiled imagery layer. We could do a dynamic as well, or we could do just a dynamic there if we wanted to. So we make a choice there. Slide this out of the way a little bit. Here we get our configuration. Do we just want, if I have a single image to upload and I just want to create a single layer on the web, I could choose the one image. If I had a set of images and I want to mosaic them together, right? So it says an interpolation, overlap, and bring them all together. Or if I had a set of images, maybe for the same geographic area from several different years, and I want to store each of those as individual items in ArcGIS Online, I could do that. After you choose that item, again, it's going to go through and you would drag and drop the imagery up here, point to a folder. You have some choices on, the type of data you're uploading. Is it elevation data or other type of data? You could use different types of compression. And you can bring in some documentation there if you want to. And once you drag them up here and go next, it starts to convert them to that cloud raster format. And you fill out the metadata, and it begins the process of creating your service in ArcGIS Online. your layer in ArcGIS Online. So what it ends up looking like this one for the experimental forest was one example here. You get this item type, and this was the one created from 6 individual images, and I created them with the configuration to mosaic all 6 of those together into a single layer. So what it ends up looking like, there's 6 individual images here that were mosaic together, and created this item in ArcGIS Online. Now, let me go back over here. That's the process in the web browser with the items that are created. If you're in ArcGIS Pro, take a look over here. So I have one raster here, just a TIFF file right around Moscow. On the imagery tab, it's not on the sharing tab like other vector web layers, it's on the imagery tab here. You will see this button called Create Hosted Imagery Layer enabled after you sign in with your VandalNet ID. And with that item selected, we can create a tiled layer, dynamic layer, our image collection or mosaic, you know, that kind of thing. We have the same choices here, and we have the ability to point to source data if you have a bunch of data. The same process as you see in the web browser to make the selections you make to publish from ArcGIS Pro. So that's how you access it with this Create Hosted Imagery button under the imagery layer. So a couple of these have been done recently as other examples to explore. For the experimental forest, UI experimental forest, we recently worked with the director to publish a couple of these item types for that area. So if we did the experimental forest, there's a DEM from 2019 LiDAR out there. And so this icon in ArcGIS Pro, you'll see, designates the tiled layer type. So here, for example, you can see it says tiled imagery layer. This is the one that just says imagery layer, which is dynamic. So you'll see that item come in here. And there's the DEM. And you'll see again, it's the pixel values in here. So we have a range of elevation values that are listed in here. You can also publish, you know, other derived products. Since this is a tile data set, went ahead and did a hillshade for that area just within the forest. And this is the result of that item in ArcGIS Online that we've shared as a raster. So it's really opened up ArcGIS Online in the ability to you know, share raster data as well as all the vector data sets we've been able to do for many years. And again, just to kind of reiterate, it's sharing the pixel data. So if you want to do geoprocessing against this service that you're streaming in, you can, and you'll get you know, the actual pixel data from that layer. So here we would query it and we'd get the elevation value for that pixel. So that's what it looks like for these products and the general workflow to produce them. Again, in my experience, I haven't done any really large ones, you know, up to several gig, but the publishing process is pretty friendly. The amount of time it takes doesn't seem to be inordinate for the amount of data. It takes a little waiting, you know, depending on how much data you have. the functionality, performance is quite good in the cloud environment. As you know, it seems certainly comparable to our hosted environment in how quick it responds to queries. So if you're interested and have some data, you know, certainly feel free to try this out and you know, explore some of these different combinations to see what might work well for you. You know, for sharing with you know, different groups, whether it be classes or you know, research projects, you know, others out there. Those are all the slides I have in the demo, and certainly we will make these slides available so you have links to those resources. You can certainly reach out to me if you have questions, bgodfrey@uidaho.edu. If you have any questions about, you know, giving this a try, or you know, kind of putting it through its paces, depending on how large your data sets are, and just kind of see what'll work. And I would say that, you know, it's still somewhat in its infancy. We haven't committed to it for a production data set yet, but these UI experimental forest data sets, these layers are out there for the DEM hillshade, the digital surface model, and the DSM hillshade seem to be working quite well. The director's pleased with their performance, and I think, you know, this is probably a direction you know, that gets migrated to for a number of data sets over the year, to unload it from on-premises resources out to cloud resources. Does anybody have any questions for me in the chat? Or Caroline, do you have anything? No, anybody in the chat have any questions? That brings us right up to about 30 minutes, which is what I wanted to keep you at. No questions? Okay, sounds good. Well, I thank you all for attending, and certainly reach out to me with any questions, and we'll have these slides out available shortly. And yeah, feel free to take advantage of this new extension on ArcGIS Online, and we look forward to seeing you in a future Data Hub workshop.